I still got to know if you have any cool stories from the 2022 National Championship game. Well, I was in an Uber today, and I was talking to my driver, and traffic was gridlocked, and he said, we need a new transit system in this city. And that was how I found out we had passenger rail in Nashville, which I didn't know until today. Secondly, we started talking about the skywalk system that they have in cities like Indianapolis where this game was played. So I had fun reminiscing about that. I'm not going to tell you a story about the skywalk, but I am going to tell you a story about how this game really started in December. When they played in the SEC championship game, I needed to watch the national title game to fully appreciate it, but Georgia started winning the national championship game the night of the SEC championship game. I remember, if we go back to Atlanta, there was a lot of celebration for Alabama, but I remember being outside Georgia's locker room. I remember being just around the team after the game, and it just felt nothing like you would think it would feel. It was almost as if the entire organization dusted itself off that night in the building and said, all right, let's go to work. And that's a champion's mentality. That's kind of a warrior's mentality. It is so hard to have that as a competitor because there's so much insecurity in the world and there's so much hurt pride and hurt feelings in the world that when you get beat soundly as a favorite in the year that everyone's saying is your year, and it's against, whether they want to admit it or not, their biggest current rival in this sport, because that was the one dragon they had yet to slay, and you get right back up and you get right back to work, if anything with more resolve, which was the word of the show earlier, than you had before. That's where they started to win that national championship game. Now, you didn't realize it until you had the full picture laid out for you, but that takes me now to January 10th. And I remember watching Georgia. I was at the semifinal game in Miami, watched them come in there. Man, they almost treated that Michigan game like a walkthrough for the national title game, which is what basically Michigan got served up as. Good year for the Wolverines, but it was a very, very tilted affair, to say the least, down in Miami. And when Georgia got to Indianapolis, they carried themselves like a team that had already won a couple of them. Now, I've been around both kinds. I've been around Bama a lot because they're always in that setting. I've been around Georgia teams in these big settings. This Georgia team carried itself different than most Georgia teams do. So the game played out like it did. And I don't think for an outsider, you can fully appreciate the level of pressure that was on this program, yet they performed relatively unaffected by the pressure. They were aware of it, though. So then the game ends and everyone goes to celebrate as however you saw fit. There was a lot of it going on. And Danny Cannell and I did a lot of post-game stuff for CBS in the stadium. So the stadium's emptied out, and there's confetti all over the place, and people are boxing it up, which I should have done because that stuff is selling like gold bars on eBay right now. But after we got done with our live hits for CBS, Kirby was back out on the field. Stetson Bennett was back out on the field. They were doing, I think, probably some SportsCenter hits. But I watched Stetson, who was doing a separate hit from Kirby, but they were both, IFB in, they're waiting for the live shot to begin. So they both kind of have a second to look at each other. And I really remember thinking, this right here is a really golden moment because you had to remember what the talk had been. Everybody forgets this. It gets lost to history. When the history books are written about the 2021 college football season, you'll know that Georgia went undefeated regular season, had a little hiccup in Atlanta. They atoned for it big time in the national title game. You can say that in one breath. Do you remember how much breath was wasted between the SEC title game and the national title game by folks asking about whether JT Daniels needs to start? By the way, which program's he playing for right now? Still hadn't landed anywhere. And yet, Kirby Smart was resolute the entire time. They never flinched. They never so much as flinched on Stetson Bennett. He was their guy. He was his guy the whole time. You can get a million different stories about why that was, but Kirby Smart never blinked. I got full respect for someone who is totally resolved in their decision-making because that's what a leader has to be. The age-old adage, if you're listening to the folks in the stands, you will soon be sitting with the folks in the stands. Well, there they were. They were on the field there, confetti all over the place. It's like snow on the ground. You got to clear out a spot if you're going to kick an extra point in the snow. You got to clear out a spot in the confetti if you're going to stand there to do the live hit. and they're just next to each other. And I remember thinking to myself, because you could see the relief on their faces, and they're talking to each other. Kirby's got a golf cart he's riding around on. They're talking to each other. But I remember thinking, no one's going to see this particular scene, but man, I hope people appreciate the resolve it takes to make the decision. Your staff makes it, but ultimately you're making it as the head man. And you're making all these millions of dollars, but it really all boils down to a few decisions. You get all the talent, okay? Once the talent's there and the staff's there and the schedule's made and the equipment arrives and you tee it up, it really comes down to a few major decisions. And that's ultimately what you get paid the big bucks for. He made one, and he stuck to it, and they never wavered. And he told you, he looked you dead in the eye the whole year, and he said, well, I'm playing him because he gives us the best chance to win. And then after they lost the game, he still had the audacity to look at you and tell you, actually, he still gives us the best chance to win. Should have told you everything you needed to know the first time he said it. It really told you everything you needed to know when he said it even after they lost. So I remember that moment. I remember being on the field long after the building's emptied and just looking at those two there. The noise has subsided and they're doing some post-game hits, but he's just standing there, kind of smiles at him, nods at him, Kirby does. That was this guy. And now look, hey, most of the time that's the end of the story, but now we get to look ahead to 2022 and Stetson Bennett's still there. And wouldn't you know it, one of the questions that didn't quite make air tonight is, all right, look, I know he won a title, but what do we make of the quarterback competition this year at Georgia? What I make of it is it's spring practice. And hey, for that matter, Stetson Bennett's going to have to earn that starting job all over again. That's the beauty and the challenge of playing at a program like Georgia.